Today I'm starting a new series where I'm going to be traveling around the globe all through my TV remote. We're going to be looking at cinema around the world. Every episode we're going to pick a new country at random, and then we're going to choose 5 movies from that country. We're going to do a little deep dive into the cinematic history of that country, some sort of identity, and just going to go through each movie and give them a nice critique. So the first country today is Kenya. So I noticed a pattern while I was watching these movies, that each movie seemed to be starting with a production company called One Fine Day Films, barring the movie Rafiki. This message was displayed at the end of Soulboy, and I feel like it kind of summarizes what's going on here. This German company called One Fine Day Films is basically focusing on finding Kenyan stories and then distributing them to a wider general audience. They give them resources and the expertise to allow these movies to actually be made. And I feel like a lot of the creative decisions were made by Kenyans, at least what I can tell from watching these. It feels like this project merely acts as a way to give these Kenyan filmmakers practical ways to actually make movies, because otherwise they would be lacking with resources and they wouldn't really have any channel to distribute these to a wider global audience. You can see here, most of these movies are available on Netflix. In Australia, I barely even had to use a VPN for some of these. It is an effective way, what they're doing, to get these Kenyan stories to global audiences. Although, with this same thing, you can tell there is a clear lack of cinematic heritage in Kenya. There isn't a long lineage of movies changing form over time and movies being influenced by other Kenyan movies. The earliest movie I watched was in 2008, and so you kind of feel like a lot of this identity is just merely a mirror of Kenyan society as a whole, which I guess is what a lot of cinema is. In this section, I want to summarize just any commonalities I saw between the 5 movies and just create a sense of what I thought is a Kenyan film identity. I acknowledge that that's a pretty broad assumption considering I only watched 5 movies, but I'm going to do the best I can throughout the series with what I have. What I saw most was a very extremely direct type of storytelling. The plot points, they come thick and they come fast. Often there's not that much explanation behind them, as much as you'd expect. Sometimes this can feel a little jarring, but other times it can lead to, really impactful moments that catch you off guard. These films are hyper focused on cinematography. The use of color is fantastic, and the locations are so vibrant and have so much life in them. Thematically, I found there seems to be a focus on gender roles and also class struggles. The locations vary from film to film, and some are focused in the capital of Nairobi and some are in the slums. The thing I want to really hone in on, I guess, is the passion that each of these movies show for filmmaking itself. It's clear through these stories that they're being told out of passion. They're not being told out of some way to make money. The market isn't there for them yet. These people are getting the chance to tell their story, and they all embed ways to show their love of cinema throughout it. Even the ones I didn't really love, I can acknowledge are made out of love for the craft and a genuine want to tell stories. Out of all the movies I watched, this movie certainly feels the lowest budget by far. It's called Kati Kati. It's a shame because I feel like it probably had the most ambitious idea out of any of the movies I watched in this episode, but I feel like the execution was lacking. The concept is a woman who finds herself in a place called Kati Kati, which is basically the afterlife, and she has to try and work out how she died and what happened to her in her real life. And we're immediately thrown into this location, and that's as abruptly as I've seen from any of these movies. It can be pretty confusing, the exposition at times. I just feel like this character goes into this world and just seems to bumble her way through without really any direction, and the aimlessness gets a bit tiring, I'd say. For this movie, the location just felt really plain and bare bones when it should have looked really ethereal and otherworldly and strange to make the audience buy into the concept. The rest of these films, they thrive off shooting in natural environments, and Kati Kati doesn't attempt to create its own atmosphere, which is needed for this sort of genre. Honestly, one of my biggest complaints is the exposure throughout the movie. I can imagine shooting in Kenya is pretty difficult because of how bright that sun is, but this movie, every shot, I'll show some examples here, are just so overexposed. And it confuses me because the rest of the movies are produced by the same production company and clearly had the equipment necessary, like an ND filter, to not have this exposure issue, but for some reason this one just is so overblown. Supermoto is the next movie I want to talk about, and it once again shows the innocent love of cinema seen in Kenyan film. It tells the story of a young girl called Jo who's suffering from a terminal illness and is absolutely obsessed with superheroes. The village all band together and pretend that she really is a superhero, which is spearheaded by her sister. It's a really cute movie, which is underpinned by a really dark idea. And they do dig deeper as well into the morality of lying to this young girl about her superpowers. And her mum especially is a really interesting character, as she is completely against it. The three leads, they all put in really fantastic performances. The last act is probably my favorite part of the movie. It's a really fun ode to budget filmmaking, which I know very well. They're using sticks as boom mics. All the people in the village come together to play animals as background sounds. And it just really shows the passion for telling stories that's in Kenya. And it highlights what I believe is at the heart of Kenyan cinema from what I've seen. It shows the finished product of this superhero movie they made with the young girl as the superhero. And they show it to the village. And you can just feel a real sense of community, joy, and connection as they're watching this movie, which I feel is exactly what all these movies are made for. Soulboy is clearly rougher than the other two movies I just discussed, being the first of the One Fine Day film productions in Kenya. It goes by in a flash at 61 minutes and often falls victim to its brevity. The pacing is a bit odd. It doesn't seem to follow a normal 3-act structure like most movies. It instead seems to revolve around 7 key beats it has to hit, as it follows our main character, a young boy going through his village to find his dad's soul. It's basically the story after he lost it to the spirit of the dead. There's 7 key lessons he has to learn before he can get his father's soul back. And there were some interesting points made about gender and racism within Kenyan culture that I think is worth watching. Once again, I'm going to keep bringing this up throughout. There was some fantastic cinematography in this one. This scene especially stood out to me, and I think would look absolutely amazing in a horror movie, which this isn't, but I would have loved to see this shot in a horror movie. Overall with this one, I wouldn't say it's anything too special. It's a start of a journey, I guess, for these Kenyan productions, and it's worth watching just for its brevity and for some really cool shots and some interesting story. Rafiki is the only movie that I watched not produced by One Fine Day Films. It follows 2 young women in Kenya trying to navigate their sexuality in the less than accepting surroundings. The bluntness really hampers the story. It feels like the 2 leads, their relationship just comes absolutely out of nowhere, which is not to deny the fact that these characters do have really good chemistry with each other. I do think they work really well together. It's just that in a romance film, that chemistry has to feel earned somehow. And I just don't feel it was. Just to move on to some positives. I mean, the colors in this film are just absolutely beautiful, and I could honestly go on all day about shots with just the use of colors, so vibrant and lively and amazing. Even though this movie, it is elevated by its visuals, the vibrancy, its cinematography, I have seen many LGBTQ stories that are very similar. And the biggest standout for this one is just the setting. The fact it's filmed in Kenya, you can really feel the danger of the homophobia, and the stakes feel drastically higher, but it doesn't change the fact that I do feel the story has been told. My pick of the bunch is Nairobi Half-Life. I really can't recommend this movie enough as an entry point into Kenyan cinema. I feel like it exemplifies all those qualities I just talked about in the Kenyan identity. Its blunt storytelling, I feel like, works best in this movie, which is about a creative's struggle living in Nairobi, this fast-paced environment, as he falls deeper into a life of crime. Our lead, Moas, he gets robbed immediately as he gets to Nairobi. There's no explanation, just straight away gets his stuff stolen away. And then seconds later, he's being arrested by the police, and no explanation once again. He's thrown into a jail cell. It doesn't explain it, but it makes sense with the pace of the city it's trying to show you. Everything moves so fast here, and there's no times for explanation. This movie as well acts as the perfect ode to cinema in Kenya, from what I've watched. It provides a lens through Moas to show just what it must feel like to be a bright-eyed creative in this environment that seems to be pushing you away from it. The conflict reaches an unbelievable fever pitch in the last act, which is a must-watch. The choreography, as 20 people all fight each other on camera at once, is so impressive, and the cinematography is absolutely stunning. This is a must-watch. For Kenya, the first one on the leaderboard, it's going to be a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time.